Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Connected Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ann, alongside the wonderful host, Marianne, and we are here to talk about how we are so passionate about wellness.
In this podcast, we look at the ways that our physical, emotional, and spiritual health are all connected and how we can take better care of our whole selves holistically so we can live our best lives. We're really excited that you guys are here with us on the journey. And we're really excited to welcome our second guest, Sandra, who's with us today. She's with us to talk about something we haven't spent a lot of time talking about lately, which is nutrition. So we're going to basically talk about the basics of nutrition 101, right? Kind of this general overview. And let me tell you why Sandra is a great guest to talk about this with. Sandra is an active duty pharmacist in the United States Public Health Service who's practiced pharmacy in a federal prison and on deployments in response to disease outbreaks and natural disasters. She's passionate about educating others on how nutrition and lifestyle affects their health on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That sounds like what we're all about here, so I love that. Sandra completed a Master of Science in Nutrition and Integrative Health and wants to open a private practice one day to help others minimize their usage of prescription medications whenever possible. So, sounds like you have an awesome background and a lot of experience, Sandra. We're so happy to have you. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. Happy to be here.
So before we get into all this good stuff about nutrition, we got to start with our wellness wins. So who wants to start? Sandra, if you want to jump in, or Rachel Ann, whatever you want.
Yeah, I'll jump in. No problem.
Go for it, girl.
Well, my wellness win is, as I was mentioning to you both, that just moved across country with my family, and things are kind of like everywhere. And normally I like to get things done right away and have things organized immediately. But my wellness win is that I've been just letting go of the tasks that don't get done. Don't let them consume my brain, and just kind of just look at them and smile and go to sleep. So it's been good for me to just practice that kind of release. So yeah.
Great job.
That's awesome.
It has got to be a huge effort. And that you got to triage, right? Like what's actually important, what really needs to happen, and what can wait. Yeah,
exactly.
Great job.
Oh, I love that. I literally have a tattoo that says let go, let God. And so anytime somebody talks about how they need to let go, I'm like, yes, I needed that reminder so much so it is tattooed on my body forever. So I am very excited about that. That's a really big deal.
Thank you.
My wellness win is the other day, I had a moment where I was triggered, and I was like, this is a common occurrence, Rachel. Why are you feeling triggered right now? And I actually took the time to sit with myself and be like, what is happening? And I was like, oh, this is what's happening. And be like, okay, how can I care for myself? And I was like, oh, I really need to just bawl my eyes out, and then I'm gonna be fine. So then I was like, okay, Rachel, we're gonna bawl our eyes out and we'll be fine. In the whole process of that, like years ago, if that was a situation, I would have been like judgmental towards myself and angry, telling myself I was weak and I was pathetic and stuff. But this time around, it was only like a few minutes, like 20-ish minutes of that whole process of talking to myself, journaling, crying, breathing. Before, it would have been hours and hours of agony and canceling plans. So I was like, wow, Rachel, you have come a long way. Good job tuning into your emotions and doing what you need to do. So that is my wellness win. I cried.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that is great. So much self-awareness. Like, I know you've been talking about that a lot lately. You just know that that's what you needed and give yourself the permission. That's amazing. Good job.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, girl. How about you?
So mine's pretty cheesy, but that's okay because I like cheese, even during the Siyam, the fast, But okay, so it was actually yesterday. I was at work in the tutoring center at my school, and Chris was actually visiting me, my husband. Sometimes when he has a short day, he comes and hangs out with me. We were just sitting together. I was reading a book because I didn't have any students at that moment. So already Chris plus book means I'm a very happy person. So I was enjoying myself. And then a student came in. I went over and I helped the student, and I was just having a good interaction with the student. And I just it just hit me like, wow, life is good. I just felt like this moment, like everything is great. I'm happy. I'm doing what I should be doing. And I just think that recognizing, that little bit of thankfulness, that, appreciation for that moment is so important, because it's almost like it gives us reinforcement for when things are not so great. We can look back on those moments that we're thankful for and happy for. So yeah,
That's awesome.
I'm going to call that a win.
Oh, that's a huge one. I love that. It was like the parts of your world were all coming together in a very harmonious way.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, really, Chris plus books equals Mary very happy. That's all I need. But but good day at work definitely helps things. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, great job, guys. Let's keep them coming. The wellness wins, because I just think it's so important to recognize when we're doing things that help us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have so much to talk about today, right? Or that we would like to talk about today. And so, Sandra, why don't you just start us off with kind of what we're going to be looking at?
Ooh, yeah. So, well, I guess the best way for me to say what we're going to discuss today is really by sharing kind of like my experience on how I got to be so passionate about nutrition. And so, as Marianne mentioned, I am a pharmacist, and actually right now, just currently, I'm actually doing a lot more public health than I am doing actual clinical pharmacy. But when I first started out as a pharmacist, and even in pharmacy schools doing rotations, and in various clinical settings, I was seeing patients on upwards of 6, 9, 10, 12, 15 prescription medications.
Oh, wow.
All at once. Yeah. And so, and once I was starting to see numbers like that, I don't know why, but it really affected me, really hit me like a ton of bricks. I remember, I think October of 2011, I almost remember the exact date, but it's either the 16th or the 17th, but I just remember that day coming home from a rotation and seeing a lot of patients on a lot of medications. And it really impacted me. I had to sit on the floor of wherever I was and just really just come to terms with the fact that people are really sick. And a lot of people are on medications unnecessarily. And as people start taking medications long term, they end up dealing with symptoms from those medications that require other medications to cover those symptoms. I mean, all of these things were swimming in my head that day, and it really, it was a burden. It felt like a burden, and I really don't know why. It was such an interesting moment for me in my life, even spiritually, because I really felt like it was from God. The burden was from God, which was bizarre as well to me, because I really hadn't had an experience like that. That day was very strange. So I got this burden, and I actually prayed that evening, and I asked God to take it away, because I was like, I'm carrying a little bit too much about this. So I asked him either to take it away or continue to keep the burden on my heart if he wants me to be a part of doing something about it. So that was over 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago. That's wild to even think of. But, and so here I am. I've been, slowly, nothing has been like radical or massive, that I've impacted, but I do try my best when I encounter people, friends, family, as I build, and actually also just completed Master of Science in Nutrition. I think you mentioned that, Marianne. But I'm taking these little steps to build towards my dream of having a practice where I can actually consistently help people, but I've seen God continue to bring it on my heart, continue to bring people in front of me who mention things. And I have when I hear somebody who has some kind of chronic illness burden with a prescription medication or just a symptom they don't know how to deal with or whatever, I just like, I get excited and want to help.
Yeah.
And of course I'm still learning so much. So anyway, all of that to say, I mean, I can either point them in the right direction or at least, share what I've seen in clinical practice, or just, and even anecdotally too. But, so what's important with all of that is that I've realized even in my own life that, when we look at our nutrition, I see nutrition and what I've seen, also clinically and personally, and also with friends and family. Nutrition should be in all of our minds as our first line of defense and really the gateway to health, to all the other levels or all the other pieces of our health. I don't like to section off physical health from the rest of the types of health, like mental and emotional and spiritual, because really we're all of those things comprise us, and we're one whole being. And so it's not like pieces of a pie. It's like it's kind of like an orb with all of those things, spinning together to keep balance with the nucleus. But for me, the physical health piece, which entails nutrition and physical movement and things like that, really can open up the doors for deeper healing in different ways. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times people who maybe feel frustrated all the time, let's say somebody's dealing with like maybe anger issues or some kind of emotional issue, maybe even just some like anxiety that's enough to like make them feel a little bit inhibited with their work or their family or whatever, or it's impacting their relationship, some kind of baseline emotional issue. A lot of times the first thing somebody would think about is counseling, or maybe not even, sometimes in our community, that's not it. It's a spiritual problem, right? I need to pray. I need to fast more. I need to talk to a Buona. I need to do whatever it is, But actually you could just be dealing with a mineral deficiency, or maybe you need a salad, or maybe you're dehydrated. And on a cellular level, if you're dehydrated, it impacts your emotions. It impacts your energy throughout the day. You know what I mean? So the key is, if we can address our nutrition, if we can address what we are ingesting and digesting on a regular basis and be very consistent about it, you might actually do one of two things. You either might get rid of those symptoms you're dealing with, or you will know for sure that it's a deeper issue and it's not a physical thing, right? It's not a physical manifestation of a nutrient deficiency or something like that. You eliminated a variable that's an extremely important variable to just get out of the picture in order to address like the things that really need to be addressed. And like I said, I've seen both outcomes. I've seen people who address their nutrition, like people who, I've realized some people who deal with like morning anxiety specifically for whatever reason. Right when they wake up, they're very anxious. And guess what? They were hypoglycemic. They were waiting too long in the morning to eat, so their blood sugar dropped too much. And once we addressed that, and they had protein in the morning and had their coffee after they ate, they actually realized they don't have the anxiety in the morning. So that's just one very, very small example. And does it work all the time when we address nutrition that all our symptoms go away? No, that's not the point of this discussion or my philosophy or my approach to nutrition and health. It's just that it's a huge variable that affects our being on a cellular level, because nutrients, the macronutrients and micronutrients, affect every single cell in your body, and you're made up of millions of them, billions of them. So if our cells that are our basic blocks of our bodies are broken down, then the bigger pieces of our bodies will also break down. And guess what? That includes your brain.
Yeah.
Your brain's a muscle. It's an organ. You know what I mean? So those are things we have to think about. We think about our pieces of our body kind of in an isolated fashion, because that's what our current allopathic healthcare system does. It treats things in an isolated way. But my heart is connected to every vessel in my body. My brain's connected to vessels that communicate with synapses and blood and everything. I mean, again, we're one being. Everything's extremely connected. So we take care of our health on a cellular level, then we can address what's left over.
Yeah.
You know? So
yeah,
hopefully that made sense.
Well, definitely. I mean, I think the connection you speak of to the gut brain by itself is such a huge, especially if you're talking about what we're eating, right? Like that's a huge phenomena that's being studied a lot. And what you said, though, not only can we address our potential emotional problems, but back to what you started with about the medication, you know, the physical problems that we're having can sometimes be treated just by adjusting our lifestyle, our nutrition, our movement, like you said. I actually am a great example of that. If I could tell a very brief story, if you want to know, it's like a testimonial.
Please do.
I was taking PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, right, for acid reflux for literally 15 years. Like, I was 20 something when I started. Okay, but I had been overweight, you know, my whole life, really. Yeah, like not even adulthood, just my whole life. And whatever, I had heartburn, so the doctor puts you on heartburn medication, right? That's what happens. And I was on it for like so long, but then about 2 years ago, I started this, you know, wellness journey, and, you know, changed the way that I ate. I changed the way that I lived, and I lost a lot of weight. And I was like, wait a minute, maybe I don't need these medications anymore. Especially I heard about how they affect your gut microbiome and, you know, gut health. I like attended a seminar on it, and I was like, I'm going to try to get off this medication. But I was like 99% sure it was going to be a disaster. Rebound, heartburn up the wazoo, you know, like, again, 15 years. I was like, this is going to be horrible, but I have to try. Right. And I learned that you're only supposed to take these medications for like a few weeks. So the fact that I was taking it for like 15 years, I was like, what's the problem? I need to try to get off the medication. Well, it was a miracle, honestly. I got off, I just like stopped taking it cold turkey, and I was completely fine, like 100% fine, like no rebound symptoms. And like, so clearly I don't have an acid reflux problem, right? I had a poor diet problem, or whatever you want to call it. And I, you know, fixed that problem. And now I don't need that prescription medication. So
it's amazing. Totally amazing story. And honestly, Marianne, you're not the only person.
I'm sure.
Specifically with PPIs, because when you said 15 years, I was like, it's tough. You can't look at the package insert on each of those drugs, all the PPIs. It says recommended for no more than 2 to 3 weeks of use. But doctors don't really say that.
No. They just kept refilling my prescription, right? Without any questions asked. You know, as long as it keeps me off their back, I suppose. Yeah, but and honestly, I want to say too, whatever I refer to with the healthcare system, I know there are a lot of individual physicians out there that wish they could practice differently, but the system we are in is broken. So sometimes people think I'm a physician basher, but I'm really not. I'm a system basher, because the system the American healthcare system, it is broken. It needs a lot of help. And a lot of people, So anyway, but the PPIs, Marianne, I'm so proud of you. And honestly, I would have been afraid too with the rebound heartburn. It's really brave step to, because especially when you're on a medication for that long. And that's part of the thing that I'm really passionate about. That's what's key to me is, it's not that medications are bad. It's how we use them and how long we use them for. Those two things really matter. If you needed a PPI for 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even a month, to get you through a season until you figure out what's wrong with your diet, what's wrong with the gut, maybe what's the underlying issue. And then you get off and you're good. You're back on
that's exactly the role of a medication.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're taking them for years upon years, I mean, of course, there are some issues that you can't avoid taking a prescription medication for years, but one that was designed for weeks that transformed into years for you is, it's big, it's huge. And I don't know. I'm sure you read too in the package insert, like all the nutrient deficiencies that happen as a result of using PPIs for too long. And what's ironic too about PPIs, if I may say, and I'm only saying this because I think there are a lot of people out there on PPIs, is that the ironic thing about PPIs is that they reduce, it's exactly what it says in the name, proton pump inhibitor. So a proton is positively charged, it makes an acidic environment. So the proton pump inhibitor closes the pump so that the acidic protons don't get in your stomach, so that it doesn't come out after you eat, right? But what's interesting is usually those digestion issues happen when there's and the reflux itself happens when there's actually too little of stomach acid in the stomach. So what's happening is people are, because of the way they eat and things like that, the acid is reduced in the stomach. And so digestion doesn't go very well. And so the little acid that is in your stomach actually ends up coming up, not because of the acid overproduction, it's because of the food staying in your stomach and not getting digested. So then the acid comes back up because it's not working on the food. There isn't enough to break down the food. So anyway, it's ironic, but the PPI is helpful because, again, in a temporary short-term manner, it can help until someone figures out so anyway, see, it's very interesting. Yeah.
So
oh, wow.
All right, we had a lot of questions for you. Rachel Ann, is there any ones that you want to definitely start with that we make sure we get to?
There's one that's like really top of mind, and we posted on Instagram. Thank you to everybody on Instagram who submitted their questions for Sandra. Sandra, that's part of the reason why I have such a long list. I think one thing that would be really helpful to talk about is organic foods. So me personally, and I don't know, Marianne, if you can relate, I was raised to be like, okay, like we don't need to spend mad money on food like that. Like the regular chicken is fine. Organic is a waste of money. It's a scam. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I've just always followed that my whole life. And I started seeing now as an adult, and I'm, making my own grocery trips and doing my own research. I was like, oh, I'm starting to hear about like chemical additives in certain products. And I was like, oh, is this an organic stuff? And I'm like, I don't really know. So I would love to hear about your thoughts about organic foods. Is it worth it? Are there some that we don't really need to like keep organic? So yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Amazing question. Do you have like 3 hours? Okay, no, okay, so really honestly, wonderful question. The answer is that organic is important, but there is a way to prioritize what organic things you buy. And also, I will say another thing that's really important about organic foods is understanding organic labels and organic certifications. So why I mention that is because there are like 40 different organic certifications now, okay? There's the basic USDA organic. There is like eco certs, and I can't even list them all because there's so many. And sometimes you'll see an organic food or a package with an organic label on it, and there's like 7 different organic certifications. And another one only has one, which is the USDA organic. So what does it all mean? So what I encourage everyone to do, just for sake of time, is if you really are interested in this and you really care about this, I would take some time to look at those organic certifications. I'll give you an example. USDA organic is actually probably the lowest level of organic certification. Okay.
Wow.
And what you need to realize too is every organic certification has their list of things that qualify that food for its organic certification, right? So USDA organic, for instance, because I don't know all the ins and outs of all of them. I just know on a rank order list, like which ones are the top of the highest and which ones are kind of in the low end. USDA organic may have like 5 things that you have to meet in order to obtain that label, and also you do have to purchase it. So the food company has to invest some money in order to get that label, and it's a cost benefit analysis for the company. So they're thinking the clientele, the customers that they want to purchase their food, is it worth investing the thousands of dollars to get that label on our food, and will we get that money back? They have to think that way. Okay, so if they're trying to get a certain group of people or a number of people to get their product, to buy their product, they'll do something like that. However, on the other hand, there are lots of foods out there that don't have any organic certification or organic label that are still totally great for you to buy and good to consume. So it's really tough because every category of food with the organic label is a different conversation, to be honest. Like, for instance, let's talk about, I know we're fasting, but let's just talk about animal products and meat, for instance, okay? So there could be meat that's labeled USDA organic or has an organic label, but the cow isn't grass-fed. So what does that matter? What is grass fed? Why is that a thing? And did you know there's grass fed and there's grass finished beef? Like, there are some companies that will start off their cows on grass, but end in a corn diet or something else that isn't like optimal for the cow. So they can say grass fed, but they didn't finish their feeding with whatever. So they basically do half and half to save them money, but also get grass fed on their label, right?
Wow.
But I know, but there are companies that do grass fed and grass finished, which means that cow or, that beef that you're eating is totally grass fed. Why is that important? The cow was made only to eat grass. So the cow is eating something other than grass. It affects their digestion. And what they digest is what gets in the muscle tissue, which is what we consume, right? Now, are there millions of studies out there, scientific, randomized, controlled, double-blind studies out there with why that meat is better than? There really aren't, because nobody wants to fund that kind of study. However, a really, really good, easy approach when it comes to food in general, and this is a little bit with organic, but just in general with food, is we want to consume foods that are closest to their natural state, right? And the reason for that is the less it's processed, the less chemicals, additives, and machines it has touched before it reaches our body. It's already tough enough to get like good quality food. So if you can't do organic or don't want to do organic, then just stick to foods as closest to their natural form as possible. That's a good rule of thumb. And actually, if you'll take a look, it's actually harder to do than you think, because a lot of our food is packaged, it's in bags, it's in, and like as delicious as an organic type of Oreo cookie is, it's how many iterations has that food product been through to get into our bodies, right? And to get into that package and to stay on the shelf for 7 months, that type of thing. So with organic, like I said, it is a little complicated. And listen, I would say too, you can do research, you can check out the labels and whatever, but if you lean towards more of just consuming foods more in their natural state, you can think less about the organic label. And actually, another fun fact about animal products when it comes to protein, animal protein, is cows actually have the highest ability to not digest the pesticides and other not great byproducts or chemicals in the food that they eat. So even if you get lower grade, I wouldn't say just go and get out like whatever beef out there, but even if you don't get the highest quality beef, you still have a higher chance of consuming cleaner protein when it comes to beef. Chickens, birds, turkeys, things like that, and also pigs, so pork, they don't have that capability the way that cows do. But anyway, I'm getting into the weeds here, but as you can see, like it's very it can be a little bit complex, but like I said, it doesn't have to be. And you can, and I also try to encourage people to say when it comes to these types of topics, when you're doing research, you only have to do the research one time. I try to encourage people and say, once you do the research and you put in a little bit of time, replace one Netflix show with one like sitting for yourself where you research like, okay, what are these labels? What is this food? You don't have to do it again. So when you go to the grocery store, you know what you're looking for. You know, you have your go-tos, and things will be so easy for you. It's a rhythm. It's not like you have to like get your continuing education grocery store hours. You know, you don't have to do that. So sometimes over the years, new labels come out and new certifications for organic foods come out, but it's not as important because you know what you're looking for, you know? So.
That is so helpful. I feel like, I'll say this and then I know, Marianne, you have a question. I feel like it's so good to know that with organic, there's different levels of it. So I'm like, okay, which ones do I care about? But also sometimes I feel like there are unhealthy things that are called organic and people are like, oh, so if it's organic, that means it's like healthy. And I'm like, no, the Oreo is like, I'm happy it's organic, but like it's still pumped with lots of sugar and me, I'm lactose intolerant. So like, let's not do the dairy. So I appreciate that you broke that down in that way. And I love that idea. It's so practical and easy. Replace a Netflix show with doing some research, and then you're good for as long as you need to be with your grocery shopping.
Like literally,
oh my gosh,
one episode of a Netflix show, not an entire show. Like one episode.
One episode.
And do a little bit of research. Yeah, that is a great tip.
Well, and sorry, Marianne, if I could mention just one more thing too, because when it comes to fruits and vegetables with organic, I think that tends to be the bigger conversation. And this is controversial because people have different opinions on this, but I think it's a great and easy guide on how to select organic or not organic. There's a very easy list out there. You can Google it. They actually do change it every once in a while, so it's good because they update it. There's the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, okay? Google those two phrases, okay? Clean 15 are the 15 fruits and vegetables out there that are least likely to have a bunch of chemicals on them because they don't need a lot to grow, okay? So if you choose to opt out from organic on any group of foods, you can use the Clean 15 as a guide. You don't have to, like for instance, a banana, you don't eat the peel. Oranges, you don't eat the peel. Those types of things, like if you're peeling them off, you don't have to worry too much. Although, you know, there's stuff that gets in it, of course, as it's growing, but we're talking like nothing's going to be toxin free in this world. Okay. Yeah. What we're talking about is reducing toxic load as much as possible. So if you can, then look at it that way. The Dirty Dozen is usually the list that has are the types of fruits and vegetables that have are known for the most pesticide use, most chemical use. So if you can go for organic, honestly, look up a farmer's market near you. There are so many more popping up these days because people are going back to their farming roots and even growing little gardens in their houses and selling their excess, you know, and things like that. Usually when they're not mass produced, they don't need to use like intense pesticides. Some are natural pesticides. It's very normal for a gardener or a farmer to use, but that's just something else to look out
Yeah.
for and pay attention.
Oh,
That's
so
a good
helpful.
tip. Yeah, I want to look those up for sure. I want to go back to what you were saying before about things that are closest to their natural state. So do you mean kind of like whole foods, like fruits, vegetables, proteins, whole grains, right? Things that are processed as little as possible?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what I mean.
So I guess that leads me to my biggest question, because there's so much. My biggest question is like, if someone has never really thought about this before, or even if like me, I've been trying to make the best decisions I can, recently, what's kind of like maybe one or two, tips that you could say, do this, and you will like improve the quality of your health. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't have to give like the Sandra guarantee, but just things that you think are like impactful changes, right? That like, because again, it is overwhelming. If I try and overhaul my entire diet, try to eat as clean as possible, it is just a little bit overwhelming. And don't get me started on supplements. We might need another episode for that, because I have a lot of questions about supplements, but so overwhelming. So yeah, just like one or two changes or habit changes or, efforts I could make that I think would see a difference. What do you think?
Okay. Number one, this is a little bit repetitive, but really, truly, if somebody could look at the food that they eat during the day and see how they can replace boxed and packaged foods with whole foods instead, like if you need something crunchy and you're always going for an overly processed salty chip, and by the way, salt is not the enemy, sugar is, and we could talk about that too, but if you want something crunchy, go for a bag of carrots. And if you need something salty and carrots are too plain, you can dip it in something, like get some hummus or get something to get a little more flavor to it. Anyway, so it's just looking at little things that you can change and replace with something that's whole and more closest to its natural
Can I ask you a question? Speaking of that, what about popcorn? Isn't popcorn a decent salty snack, but like compared to chips or something?
You know what? Popcorn is a really great option, but you have to. Not all popcorn is created equally, and this is one thing I'll mention too. Another thing you could do is I tell people to look at the labels of the foods that they eat the most. Okay, so what do I mean by that? If you get a package of cookies that you really like once a month and you go to town on them, just disregard the label. Like, just enjoy that time, whatever. I try my best to be as sensible as possible, because it is really about balance too. And another thing too is if you're overly stressed about what you're eating, it actually can hurt you more than the food itself. So not trying to be on edge and stressed out about what you're eating. But if you make some changes, like again, let's say you have this, I don't know, this protein bar that's chock full of chemicals, and you have it 4 times a day, every day of the month. Let's say that is a thing. That is something we need to look at the label at. And we need to look at the ingredients and see, is this serving me well? Is this full of chemicals? Is there anything real in here that's actually, sure, there's a bunch of vitamins and minerals in here and I'm getting 30 grams of protein in it, but at what cost? Like, are there inflammatory oils in them? Is there any natural food source in this protein bar that I'm eating? Or is it just literally man-made chemicalized bar that is giving me some kind of nutrients on a surface level because it's written on the package? Those types of things. I tell people, what your household consumes the most is what you should look at with the most critical eye. Okay, so I'd say to do that. Like, I know you asked for one or two things, but I might give you
I'll
three or
take
four.
them all,
So,
yeah.
so definitely one, replace anything that you can that's packaged or boxed with something that's closest to its natural form. Two, look at the labels of the things that you're eating the most of, that you individually are eating the most of, and your household is eating the most of. Number three, I would say to pay attention to gluten. And the reason why I say that, and I say it very hesitantly too, because this is also a very controversial topic, but often you will find that a lot of people these days are having, gluten allergies, gluten sensitivities are increasing everything. And I also have heard anecdotally and also personally too, that people who don't tolerate a lot of gluten products in the United States, actually when they travel abroad, they tolerate gluten and bread and crackers and stuff abroad much more easily. And a lot of that, to me, and a lot of research and in the functional nutrition world, this conversation has come up a lot. To me, that signals it's not exactly a gluten issue, but it's how the wheat is grown and prepared in the United States that's affecting people's guts. So, and there's the number one culprit that many people discuss in the functional nutrition world is a thing called glyphosate, which is actually a weed killer, and it's used as a pesticide. It's banned in a lot of countries, but in the U.S. continues to use it on their gluten and their wheat products. So people are finding, and people eat gluten. People have wheat products, so people are finding that the more they're consuming this gluten that's covered in this weed killer, it's affecting our gut lining, intestinal permeability, and that relates to our brain health, emotions. So it could cause problems, and we don't realize. What I'm not saying is to cut out bread, or cut out all wheat products or whatever. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, if there's a way that you can take a look at what bread and wheat, what products you eat throughout the day, look to see the quality. I'm finding more too on shelves, some bread and wheat products that are organic, in the way that they say glyphosate free on it, which is the weed killer that I'm talking about. And also used with different types of grains, like more ancient grains that haven't been modified genetically, that haven't been altered in a way that we don't really know yet what the effects of that will be. So I'm not saying GMO is bad. I'm just saying it hasn't been around long enough for us to know what it's really doing. So anyway, it's a lot. So you can look for grains like amaranth and buckwheat and einkorn. There are bread products and rolls and things like that made out of that type of grain, that type of product that's actually easier to digest, less likely to have a weed killer or like really intense chemicals on them, and may not cause as much of a reaction in people as conventional gluten would. So that's thing. And there is one more thing I want to mention, and it's about coffee.
Okay.
I'm a little bit nervous,
Sandra. Yeah, I think we're just about out of time.
Exactly. Oh yeah, look at the time.
I mean, I may be able to handle whatever you're about to say, but my husband will never speak to me again if I remove coffee from
Well, you don't
household.
have to tell him. It's fine. And honestly, I don't want you to lose followers either. So if you don't want me to say
it. We'll hear it. It's fine. We'll hear it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll just mention, first and foremost, before I'm in front of the firing squad, I'm not saying to get rid of coffee. I do suggest, however, to analyze and look critically at the type of the quality of your coffee, the type of coffee that you're drinking, and the timing of your coffee. Okay. So I would say most people I know that are like avid coffee drinkers usually start their day with coffee on an empty stomach. Okay. So I'm not at this point, not even worried about what gets added in the coffee. I'm talking about the coffee itself and the quality of the coffee. So if you are consuming coffee on a regular basis in the morning, with, and without anything else in your stomach, especially without protein in your stomach, you actually are basically pressing the gas on a car that has no fuel in it. Okay, so if you can think about that, you're turning on the fight or flight mode in your body by revving it up without having fuel for it to actually operate properly. If you do this every single day, you actually end up tiring your body out. So there's kind of like this burnout and that's what ends up happening with people who are chronic coffee drinkers. They get that afternoon slump, and then they feel like, okay, I need a second cup of coffee to get through the second half of my day, things like that. So my advice is that if you can switch to decaf so that you get the semblance of drinking coffee, that's great. I wouldn't do it cold turkey, especially if you're working. You can do it over time. If you can't, I would say please prioritize having some nourishment in your body first. You can try to wait an hour, then get your coffee in there. Also, green tea, like really good quality matcha, is a great replacement. Does it taste the same? Not at all. So if you don't like that and your taste buds are just not jiving with matcha, that's fine. But it's just an alternative if you're willing to do it. It actually has some other really good byproducts. Green tea and matcha have really great byproducts that help with your overall cognition and don't give you that afternoon slump. So if you are able to replace it, go for it. And then take a look at the company, the brand of your coffee. There are some great brands out there that test for mold and fungus and pesticides and things like that, which, because coffee is so popular, they have to mass produce it. And in order for them to get the highest yield out of these crops, they have to use chemicals to sustain the crops. You have to think about it that way. If there's something that people around the world are consuming a lot of, they have to make a lot of it, and they have to preserve it in order to yield their profits. So in order to do that, they have to use chemicals. They have to do all this. So there are companies now that are third-party tested for lots of different things. And again, this is the thing I'm telling you. If you get a Starbucks latte once a month, don't even listen to this conversation. It's okay. Get your Starbucks coffee, have a fun time at the cafe, use the free internet, drink the triple filtered water, enjoy, But if you're drinking coffee every single day, that is something that's important to take care of. Like, you are ingesting that. It's going in your body. So, I'm sorry. You see, like, it's, I know, I think I just used 20 minutes on coffee alone.
No, it's a lot. But I think, a main takeaway from everything you said is, like, if we could just be a little bit more aware, a little bit more intentional, and just remember that, like, this is my one and only body. It's a gift from God. Let me try and take care of it the best way that I can, and fuel it properly. So I think your point is very fair. I will say that because Chris is such a coffee snob, we only get from a local roaster here. So hopefully that, it solves some of those issues. Yeah. But the first thing in the morning is going to be a bit difficult to give up. Yeah,
I know, it's tough.
But no, I think
it's tough. It's one of the only legal drugs. Yeah. When I was training for long distance sporting events, I used caffeine to help me. The thing is that when I trained with caffeine, I had to continue taking it, because if it dropped in the levels, my energy would dip as well. So you see how that is. But when I trained without caffeine, I didn't need continual caffeine. You see how that's why caffeine again, can be very beneficial, especially if there's a day you just couldn't sleep. You had 2 hours. Actually caffeine is available for us for that. So we can have a little bit of adrenaline kick, when you're properly fueled. It's very powerful and helpful. But it's one of those things that when you give it to your body every single day, multiple times a day, your body is like, okay, I'm in constant fight or flight here, and I can't turn off. And the half-life of caffeine is also, it's like 8 hours, I believe. So it only gets reduced to half of its amount in 8 hours. So that means it takes another 8 hours to get down to another half less. So you see how it's like, it's more of a story than we realize,
Yeah.
So anyway.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I think you gave us a lot of food for thought. Sorry I had to, but I mean, a lot to think about and probably a lot of questions generated. But, Rachel, Ann, why don't you tell us how anyone can get in touch with Sandra or can get in touch with us if they want?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a really great episode, y'all. We hope you enjoyed it. Sandra, we should probably have you come back like 5 times, and y'all be nice to her about the coffee thing. Okay?
I know,
She's here for you and your nutrition and your body. I know it was really hard.
I love you all.
But Sandra, are you on social media at all? Do you feel comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram, and should I say my handle or whatever? Is that what they even call it?
Yeah, handle, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really on Instagram. No, I actually, I'm at Sandra Mary Say, S-A-Y, and you can message me on there. I sometimes post little nutrition tips, really on my stories, because I'm not totally like savvy with Instagram, but I do post things on stories a lot. And and hopefully as things progress, as I continue on this path, I would like to make a separate page for nutrition and things. So if that ever happens and evolves in that way, I'll let you both know. And
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Sandra, we will link your Instagram down below so that people can just contact you. And when we update that for your nutrition one, we'll update it and we'll be very excited about it. I'm at Real with Rachel Ann on Instagram. Marianne is at Waba Saba. Connected Wellness Podcast is also on Instagram. We are Connected Wellness Podcast on Instagram. If you want to email us, you can email us at connectedwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. If you don't remember anything I just said, that's fine. It'll all be linked down below. So you can follow us there. But thank you so much, Sandra. I think this is a really important topic for our community, especially as we're thinking about ways to incorporate God into our nutritional life and making sure that the body that He has given us, we're taking care of it. And it's really hard in the world that we live in for a lot of reasons that you mentioned, and I wholeheartedly agree with those things. But we have to find a way to do something. And so thank you for the practical tips and for taking the time. And on that note, Marianne, would you like to say your goodbye slogan that I always mess up?
Be well, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Awesome. Be well, everybody. Take care. Bye.